Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
With a lifetime of passion for public television, we are pleased to help underwrite Informed Sources.
Please join us in supporting WYES TV.
Hello, I'm Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. At a time when the federal judiciary has touched off plenty of controversy, an appeals court added fuel locally this week with a ruling on short-term rentals in New Orleans. The decision could upend the housing market. The mayor, Cantrell, visited neighborhoods to talk about the city's future. And at another meeting, this one with the press, she defended her appearance at a carjacking sentencing as well as her recent travels. Elsewhere, regulating prostitution is proving to be a tricky issue, as is finding the right words to deal with Mardi Gras. All of that, plus our Future Watch segment, which looks at the prospects for flu this season, are on the docket for tonight's Informed Sources. Errol, Laborde, producer of Informed Sources. Curt Sprang, news anchor and reporter, WGNO TV, Channel 26. Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter. And Ben Myers, staff writer of the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate. We go over to Curt to start. And Mayor Cantrell held a press conference, sort of a late afternoon press conference to just sort of respond to criticism that she's been facing, and it was an interesting one.
It was an interesting press conference this week to address a couple of issues, but I should say that she kind of set the table for much of this tumult more than a year ago. You'll recall when the mayor talked about having a holistic approach to fighting crime. You heard the police chief also use the same term. We heard the DA talk about taking a new approach to handling juveniles, and that is a great deal of what the mayor has been focusing on. And she touted this Pathways program. It's essentially a program for juvenile offenders. Rather than having to do any sort of incarceration time, or they're sentenced to this program that it outlines goals for them that they have to go through to prove that they can get their lives together, make the right decisions. And there was a juvenile accused of multiple carjackings and who went through this program. And at sentencing time, the mayor, because this is one of her big pet programs, she showed up to show support for this juvenile offender who went through this program. There were also in the courtroom, though, victims. And when the mayor showed up and sat with the family of the accused, who got, by the way, probation, the victims felt that the mayor was taking sides. And there are there are different accounts on how much interaction there was between the mayor and the victims, but in any case, it certainly made it look like she was taking sides in this whole thing. But the mayor has been trying to highlight this program for some time, and so she wasn't taking sides, she says, although later on she revealed during this press conference that she gets a list regularly of juvenile offenders, but does not get a regular list of the victims in those crimes that the juvenile offenders are accused of committing. Also, the second issue is the mayor's travel. She's had a couple overseas trips. She went to France and Switzerland. She had planned to go to Singapore, but jumped out of that. And these are dealing with the pricey airline tickets, pricey stays, a hotel or an airline ticket in the $17,000 range. The mayor says that she has to fly business class, although the records show some of the tickets were business class and some were in fact first class, but a $17,000 ticket for France. And when she was asked about that, the mayor said, look, this is about the sister city agreements. It's about getting very important tourism dollars to bring international tourists back to the city. But in a city that can't fix pipes and potholes, to say you spent $17,000 on a first-class ticket is a tough sell, to say the least, all while the NOPD is losing officers. So it was a difficult explanation for her, and it also was overdue. Reporters had been asking questions for weeks about her travel, and you'll recall that she had a press conference for the signing of the documents for the facial recognition. for the NOPD, and reporters had questions about travel, and she pretty much refused to take the questions. And one of the members of her administration picked up all the reporters' microphones and handed them back to the reporters when they wanted to ask other questions. So not only was this overdue, it seemed like a lot of the questions had been festering for a while.
And so the upshot then of this press conference, I mean, she called it, and I mean, I certainly have heard a lot of criticisms coming from various sources about this press conference. What did it accomplish?
Well, you know, it'll be interesting to see if, in fact, she has handled this to an extent that people are going to be satisfied. I don't know that that's going to happen. I mean, yes, John Bel Edwards has traveled overseas. Mitch Landrieu traveled overseas. As I recall, the numbers were about a $17,000 trip to Europe, but 4 people went, and Mayor Cantrell is accused of spending about that much just on one airline ticket. So I think that's going to be a lot of the devil in the details on this.
Now, regarding, you know, the carjacking incident and the young juvenile involved in that, and the program that he had gone through, Pathways, that's one that the mayor certainly has touted. She's very interested in, and as you said, you know, it's just really a holistic approach that she and other sources in government have about juvenile crime. There are a number of programs that she has going on in City Hall for youth.
She has multiple programs, and each mayor over the years has kind of picked different ones as their pet ones. I remember Mark Morial was big into midnight basketball, you may recall. So I think that each mayor picks their pet programs and the ones that they think will be the most effective. And the mayor had to know that people would notice, although she said she had been to court for other juveniles previously, but perhaps not for a juvenile carjacker with terrified victims still there.
And plural, too, victims. So, you know, there were a number of carjackings that this person did.
Multiple carjackings and multiple victims. And they were certainly disappointed that it seemed to them that the mayor was backing the juvenile.
But the mayor said she doesn't pick sides.
I think what she was trying to do was highlight that this is somebody who she had successfully taken through this holistic approach that she has pitched.
I think, though, when she says she doesn't pick sides, that baffles a lot of people. Why should there be sides between the victims and the person that committed the crime? I mean, it seems to me, you know, it's one way. Anyway.
Well, that's the way the mayor responded to it. So, okay, thanks a lot, Curt. Let's go on over to Ben right now. And something else that the city now is going to be dealing with yet again is short-term rentals because of a Fifth Circuit Appeals Court decision. And so council has to revisit it. I don't think anybody really knows what these short-term rental rules are. They've been changed how many times now?
That's right. So just to quickly review, in 2019, the city came up with its new, most latest short-term rental law. It's the second one. And through that law, one of the central pieces of it was that short-term rental applications in residential areas need to be accompanied by a proof that the owner of the house lives there full-time. Homestead exemption.
Homestead exemption.
Yes, thank you. And that was a carefully chosen policy over other ways of limiting STRs in residential areas. And there was some question at the time whether or not it would be upheld as a constitutional, as complying with the U.S. Constitution. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals this week seemed to take everybody off guard with its decision and saying, no, it does not comply with the Constitution because it allegedly discriminates against out-of-state investors. So the effect of that ruling, it did not immediately strike down the law, but all that needs to happen now is for a district judge to say, to point at that and say, well, your law is invalid. In response, the City Council will very soon, I think next week, consider a moratorium on all residential STR applications to give it time to rewrite the law yet again. The appellate court ruling, the judge, did make some suggestions for accomplishing the city's goals in different ways that it would consider constitutional, so we'll see if that kind of becomes part of the discussion.
And that was one of the suggestions, was setting a cap in any given neighborhood of how many residential residences would be allowed to be rented out on a short-term rental basis. But that was discussed in the earlier days of trying to establish rules, and there were problems with it.
That's right. So there was some different ways of going about this, and city officials did consider what the court is now suggesting back in 2019. They considered doing caps or maximum number of STRs on certain blocks. But I think what had happened is that officials decided that itself could be unfair, because who gets to have the who gets to get awarded that license?
So this it applies to Orleans Parish and its short-term rental rules. So, and it's applying to when an entire residence is rented out, right? Not just a room.
That's right. Yeah, it's called whole home rentals, and they're currently technically illegal.
Okay, technically illegal. And this opinion definitely stated it wasn't fair to out-of-state investors. But not all investors in these homes are out-of-state. They're local. They could be in the same block.
That's right. I mean, by its legal reasoning, it's also discriminatory against anybody who doesn't live in Orleans Parish, whatever town they may live in the state. However, I think the central reason why it was considered unconstitutional is because it is discriminatory towards out-of-state investors under the Commerce Clause of the U.S. Constitution.
Okay, so council is going to have to once again go back to the drawing board and see how to handle this. And this doesn't apply to some of the condo units that are serviced.
That's right. There's no effect whatsoever on STRs in commercially zoned areas.
Okay. All righty. All right, Ben. Thanks a lot. Okay, Dawn, over to you. What kind of news do you bring to us regarding our upcoming flu season?
Get ready.
Oh, boy.
Get ready, get your tissues and your cough drops and whatever else you might need, because it's expected to be a big flu season. We usually copy our neighbors to the south who are in their winter right now. So our medical experts look to Australia and see what's going on during their winter. And flu season in Australia right now is bigger than it's been in 5 years. Higher hospitalizations and case counts. I don't have statistics on deaths yet. And there are a lot of reasons for why it could be bigger than it normally is, or bigger than it's been in 5 years. One of them is just the relaxation of all the COVID restrictions. You know, for 2 years across the world, we were masked. We stayed home when we didn't feel well. We stayed distanced. We're all merging again together, and people spread germs. I had the flu several flu seasons ago, and I ride in the crew of Tux, and I got the flu 2 days later, and I asked my doctor, when was I most contagious? And she said, the last time you felt great. Well, that was the day I was throwing beads from a float. So you don't know that you're sick until, you don't know that you're spreading germs until after you don't feel well with the flu. So, and it is contagious. Best time to get flu vaccines, they are out already, but I'm told the best time to get them is September and October. It takes a couple of weeks for full efficacy. Children need, young children need 2 shots, so it takes them even a little bit longer, because we don't peak generally with flu season until February. So that gives you enough time to get the full efficacy and not too much time where the flu shot starts wearing off. The experts are very worried that people have vaccine fatigue because of COVID, and the flu vaccines are coming out, and the push to get flu vaccinated is coming out at almost the same time a new COVID booster's coming out. Right. You can get those 2 shots at the same time. I'm told you probably shouldn't get the shingles vaccine and one of those other things at the same time, because it generally will make you, studies show, not want to get the flu vaccine ever again, because the reaction to the shingles vaccine can be bad. And people tend to correlate those two in their heads.
So Dawn, when you say a new COVID booster is coming out, is that a booster beyond the 2 we've already had? So it's a 3rd booster?
It's a 3rd booster, and it's mixing up more of the diseases in a way that's supposed to be stronger and better in fighting the current strains of COVID going around. The biggest fear among the medical community, besides that people won't get vaccinated and therefore will spread to others, is that we could end up in a situation that we've talked about for a couple of years now, which is called a twindemic, having major COVID cases and major flu cases going around at the same time, which could result in an overburdened medical system, more people in the hospital, and more deaths. The flu is no joke. 50-some thousand people die of it every year in this country, so it's not to be taken lightly. The people at greatest risk for flu are also those same people who are at greatest risk, I cannot say that combination of words, greatest risk for COVID, and those are the very young, the very old, people with comorbidities, pregnant people. And the flu, kind of unlike COVID, is one of those where they say if we vaccinate our children, we can help the spread, because a lot of it's spread through those droplets of kids coughing and sneezing and spreading through the air. So if we can keep the young people healthy, it also keeps the older people healthy. But there is a whole lot of vaccine resistance. There's a whole lot of vaccine mistrust after COVID. The medical experts say, you know, according to the CDC, in the years 2019 to 2020, so before COVID, the vaccine is believed to have prevented an estimated 7.5 million cases of the flu, prevented 105,000 hospitalizations, and prevented 6,300 deaths. So they say it's no, you know, it's very valuable to go get that vaccine.
So is that vaccine going to be based on what's occurring like in Australia right now?
Yes, it's the same mix-up of what's occurring in Australia right now, and it seems to be proving effective for those who have received it in Australia.
Okay. Oh, well, that again.
Time to roll up the sleeves and get another one.
All right, Dawn. Thanks a lot. Ben, we're going to go back on over to you. And Mayor Cantrell has been holding a series of meetings around the city neighborhood meetings. And why has she been doing this, and what's been achieved?
So this is part of the annual budgeting process. Mayors before have done these kind of community meetings in each city council district. Theoretically, it's supposed to be a chance for residents to weigh in on her annual budgeting priorities, but in reality, the City Hall is still kind of gathering all that together, and it really is more of a chance for her to face people directly in their districts in kind of an annual basis. She kind of laid out some broad priorities having to do with code enforcement, city staffing, improving the efficiency of city government. But these were mostly, so she would kind of open with a 15 to 20 minute speech that was pretty much the same talking points every night, and then received questions in a moderated format. And a lot of the questions were very similar. Questions about sanitation, public safety, blight, and various other ills that the city is facing. Her answers tended to attempt to show what her administration has done about these things more so than what are plans for the budget, because again, the budget is still being formulated. But pretty much followed that same script in each district. They were mostly not chaotic affairs. There wasn't a lot of back and forth. There was a few spontaneous discussions that she had with folks, but it wasn't. It's pretty tightly moderated and pretty tame, frankly.
And on the heels of these meetings, we're seeing once again in parts of Orleans Parish, trash buildup again.
That's right. So a lot of the focus on sanitation has been in what is called Area 2. Which is basically Lakeview, New Orleans East, and Gentilly. But now there's been a ton of complaints in Service Area 1, which is Uptown, Algiers, and Mid-City. And the city is now talking about wanting to rebid that contract. There's two primary contracts in the city. And the first one in Service Area 2 has been rebid, and there will be new contractors starting in November, according to plans. And now they're talking about rebidding Service Area 1.
Okay, at the end of the neighborhood meeting in Lakeview, the mayor said something that really stirred up a lot of concern.
That's putting it lightly. Yeah, it was the last question of the last night of all of the meetings. And she was taking a question about what Mardi Gras might look like given the police staffing crisis. And she just stated very frankly that if we don't have enough police, there will be no Mardi Gras, and that's a fact. She said that. And that was the last question of the night. Social media lit up immediately. And the next day she came back and said, no, we are having Mardi Gras, but there's a serious crisis.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks, Ben. And that just takes us right into Errol, because he wants to talk about that.
Yeah, well, this is a serious semantics question. There should be a sign above the exit door in the mayor's office saying, never say Mardi Gras will be canceled, because in fact, Mardi Gras won't be canceled because it's a holiday. It goes back to ancient times. What can be canceled is parades. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can be canceled, but Mardi Gras will not be canceled. I mean, you can still have the day, you can still have parties, you can still have the calendar day and everything else. But whenever they say that, it gets international headlines and it gets them in a hurry. It goes back to like Ray Nagin when he was at the meeting. Same kind of situation. Somebody asked, "Hey, Mayor, with all the troubles we have, should we have a Mardi Gras?" And he said, "Maybe we should cancel it." He didn't realize all the TV cameras that were there. And it winds up hurting the city. I mean, I would bet that maybe there were a few hundred people who heard that news and canceled their plans to come to Mardi Gras. And so just a word of caution, don't say Mardi Gras is canceled. But there is a legitimate issue. And the legitimate issue is the number of police. And so that's the way you got to answer the question, is that we really have to work on staffing the police force and find alternatives to it. And we can do the best we can. We may have to shorten the parades, as they did this past year. You know, there are things we can do. There may be some options that we need to express. But for the sake of tourism, if not historical accuracy, Mardi Gras will not be canceled.
And certainly, as Ben said, you know, the mayor walked back that statement and said, no, that, you know, there's going to be Mardi Gras, there's going to be a carnival, and parade.
But the mayor of all people should never say that.
Well, I mean, it definitely got people upset,
Yeah.
and then, I mean, not to mention the fact that crews are really working at this right now, and everybody in those crews putting together their costumes, their themes, getting their throws, et cetera. You know, it's what, 4 or 5 months away from Carnival, from Mardi Gras. So it definitely ruffled some feathers when people heard that.
And increasingly, some of the crews, especially some of the big ones, are depending more and more on out-of-state riders. And so imagine those people who really make a financial commitment to ride in the parade in terms of renting hotel rooms and being in New Orleans for the time. You know, it could discourage them. So it has a huge negative impact.
So parades are going to roll, as we know it right now, in the city of New Orleans.
Well, what we know for sure is that Mardi Gras will happen.
Mardi Gras will happen. It's here on that calendar, as you have reminded me often. Okay, thanks a lot. All righty, Curt, we're going to wind this discussion up with you because there's a situation happening in a certain part of the city that really is concerning some people in that part of the city, but not others. So it's giving you food for thought.
I think it's concerning different people for different reasons. This is prostitution. In June, Oliver Thomas, the city councilman for New Orleans East, and a big stretch of Chef Highway goes right through his district, he proposed a couple new ordinances that would have essentially been a bit of a crackdown or added laws or clarity to laws for prostitution. One was permitting premises for prostitution, the other concealing of prostitution. And I thought he was maybe setting the ground for what Jefferson Parish did in 2010 when they went out to Airline Highway and shut down some of the motels that they said were causing problems with drugs and prostitution. And Oliver Thomas says out on Chef Highway, he says there's a lot of the drug problem and some of the shootings out there even may be connected to the prostitution problem. But by the time July came around, these things had been postponed, and he got a lot of blowback from these ideas. And he found out, he said in his words, this is a really double-edged sword, that there are a lot of people who are consenting in this, who do this, frankly, to put food on the table. And one of the people who didn't speak to him specifically, but who has been an advocate for the other side of this issue, is State Representative Mandy Landry from New Orleans, who proposed last legislative session a bill to decriminalize prostitution. She says, look, prostitution is illegal, but pornography isn't, and the only difference is there's a camera in the room. And she says that if you have these laws that crack down, and granted, I mean, if you went out to Airline Highway, you would see there's a lot of development. They got new lights out there, and things have looked like they've improved, but she'll say all that does is push it somewhere else when you crack down on it. She proposed a bill and was the first one to go before a state legislature to decriminalize statewide prostitution. It didn't get out of committee, and she doesn't think she's going to pitch it again, but it certainly made it a discussion for sure. And she says that for the people who are consenting, and again, these are consenting people, she says it should be decriminalized. She said, I know you talk about trafficking, you talk about drugs, and the people who, if you decriminalize it for the people who can consent to doing it, they're often around the drugs, they're often around the trafficking. And if there's no fear for them to be arrested, well, then maybe they'll be more likely to report those other crimes. And so that's the other side of the story. Oliver Thomas now has indefinitely postponed his proposals, and it seems like...
Which would have cracked down on it.
Which would have cracked down. And again, he got some blowback, he says. And it seems to me that if there's anything that the city's going to do, if there's anything, it's going to probably be more about compromise than crackdown. But again, and Landry says she doesn't plan to reintroduce her bill for statewide, but she does feel it's something that a city could look at doing at a city level. So a lot remains to be seen. It's you know, the oldest profession, they say.
Right, but there's also a lot of complaints about it, certainly, from people, business people in that area, residents in that area. They would like to see a crackdown. And
Oliver Thomas says that there isn't efforts being made to reach the homes and the businesses in the area to say, hey, people are going to start watching you. He says that there are laws on the books, and that's a big part of the discussion on so many things, that there are laws on the books. If you just enforce those, you don't need the additional laws. We'll see if anything gets done on this.
All right, thanks a lot, Curt. All right, guys, other stories, we're going to go over to E.
Well, this weekend is the last preseason game for the NFL and for the Saints also. Usually the weekend after the last preseason game is the beginning of the regular season, but the way the calendar works is that next weekend there won't be any games, and then so the season will start the weekend after next. So we have an extra week to prepare our game face for the season.
All right, Dawn, over to you.
Well, first I want to give Dr. Fred Lopez at LSU Health Sciences Center infectious disease specialist credit for all my information today. Second, if you want to hang out with lots of your friends and neighbors and hope they don't have germs, the Dome is open next weekend for football. It's just LSU playing football in the Dome next weekend. So it will be a big weekend in the city even without the Saints.
Not just to Tiger fans.
Exactly.
Yes, indeed. Ben.
There's been a lot of talk, increasing talk lately about panhandling and homelessness. And I think that Councilwoman Leslie Harris has a proposal to create some kind of czar position within City Hall. Maybe it might be a consultant even, to address this in a way that is both fair to people who are in need and also people who find it to be a nuisance.
All right. Curt?
Well, a group of people has launched a recall effort against Mayor LaToya Cantrell. It's a very tall order. It's going to require more than 50,000 signatures from registered voters. That is just getting underway. Keep in mind, people tried that with Mike Yenny, and it didn't go anywhere. Let's see if this one does.
Yeah, it's really an uphill battle, isn't it, for a recall? All right. Thanks a lot, guys, for being here, and we thank you, too, for joining us, and look forward to seeing you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
With a lifetime of passion for public television, we are pleased to help underwrite Informed Sources.
Please join us in supporting WYES TV.